The Vancouver Canucks find a hidden gem with one of their two-way players called up from Abbotsford, and there is major reports coming out the Vancouver Canucks are making trade calls looking for another defenseman. We're going to break down this and more later on this episode. Before I start, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone that is subscribed. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're enjoying this content, make sure to go down and hit the subscribe button. It's completely free and you can stay up to date to do with everything with the Canucks. With that, let's hop straight into the first topic today, which is the Canucks found a hidden gem. And this hidden gem, of course, it's Erik Brannstrom. We've seen Erik Brannstrom acquired when we traded Tucker Pullman to the Colorado Avalanche. And Griffin, looking at Brannstrom, his brief stint with the Canucks, has he been just showing signs of being a full-time NHL guy on this roster already?
Absolutely, he has. And I think when we brought him over from Colorado, everyone was saying that, why are you so excited about this? This guy isn't going to be anything. He's already been around. We've seen we've seen what he has to offer. We know who he is at this point. Well, when he comes over to Vancouver, when other guys come over to Vancouver, they tend to get better. They tend to play the best hockey that they've ever played. And we're seeing that from Brannstrom. We're seeing in his short time with Vancouver, he's already making an impact. Yes, he's going to be like Archie Bains, where he's going to get bounced back and forth from the NHL to the AHL on those on just like that two-way contract, like you said. So we're going to see a bit more of him throughout the year. And I think we're definitely going to see him become one of our best defensemen in a defensive core where we definitely need all the reinforcements we can get. And if we can have one that's in-house that we don't have to go out and get in a trade like we're going to cover later on, I think he's going to find a very nice spot in this Vancouver Canucks defense, particularly on that third pairing. I think definitely Susie and Myers, even though they haven't produced much efficiency, I think that's still going to stay the way it is. But again, it's making sure that third pairing is really solid. And I think Brannstrom is a great step towards doing that.
And the biggest thing is you're looking at this defense. Brannstrom comes in and fills a need the Canucks really needed. We looked at the third pairing going into the season with Forbort and Desharnais. Both of these guys are absolute units. They can lay the body, but the biggest thing they needed was a puck-moving defenseman. And that's what Brannstrom really came in and has been doing. We've seen Brannstrom put up a point with the Vancouver Canucks in 5 games, but that doesn't show the full picture of him. We're seeing him play low minutes on the third pair, and he's getting shelter minutes. He's playing with a good defensive defenseman in Desharnais, but having someone like this extendable to put in your lineup, send down to Abbotsford to get more cap space going in a trade deadline means a lot to this team. He's a guy that can play the left side or the right side, going in with either a guy like Forbort or Desharnais, or maybe another partner, depending on how the Canucks go with the trade. But like you said, we will touch on this later. But when we do look at this, and this was coming from last game against the Carolina Hurricanes, while the Swede was on the ice, Vancouver did not face a single high danger chance against, while being able to record 5 high danger chances, 4 of their own. That's a darn good ratio to be managing in non-significant minutes, and you can read through this. He didn't play a lot of minutes playing with a guy like Vincent Desharnais. This is from Michael on Canucks Army. But looking at the impact he has, looking at the puck moving ability, do you think we're going to really see him maybe come in and solidify himself as that number 6 defenseman to play either on the left or right side?
I think so for sure, especially for the reason, like you said, he can play both sides. So we have we have a Swiss Army knife of a utility belt player where not only is he on a two-way contract where you can move him back and forth from Vancouver to Abbotsford to make cap space and go out and get a solid D guy at the trade deadline, but now it's also, okay, now we're not limited as far as what kind of defenseman we can look for. We can look for a left defenseman or a right defenseman because Brannstrom can play both sides, and that's going to be very beneficial for them. And it's going to be something that teams aren't going to expect. They're not going to know how to react to Brannstrom as far as where he's going to be playing on any given night.
And the biggest thing is we've seen Noah Juleson kind of struggle throughout the gates, but you still have guys like Forbort that can be your 7th defenseman. If Brannstrom's not playing, then maybe he's your 7th defenseman. The Canucks have so much to work with on the back end. And what's your guys' thoughts on a guy like Brannstrom? We didn't even get to talk about Bains and how he's been dominating the past 2 games, but we'll go straight into the second topic today, which is there a trade incoming? Now, we did see some reports come out from Frank Seravalli, and listen, I know a lot of Canucks fans don't like him. He is an insider. He knows what he's talking about. And he went on to Sportsnet 650 and said they're already making calls and trying to understand the market looks like to improve the team's defense. He continued on by saying they want to continue to push the envelope, and that should be no surprise to no one, given the volume of deals that Patrik Allvin has made. Now, Griffen, looking at this, and the one part I want to point out is no one should be surprised. We seen before trade deadline last year, Patrik Allvin went out, and he picked up his guy in Nikita Zadorov and picked up his guy in Elias Lindholm. He made 2 deals before a deadline, and it should not come as a surprise at all. Do you think maybe they're looking at doing this early season trade before teams start to figure out what they need?
I don't think it would be very surprising considering, like you said, that history that Patrik Allvin has. However, where I don't think that Seravalli is just stirring the pot is exactly that, where the first half of that comment is just, we know that he is a very avid Oilers supporter versus the Canucks. We've seen it in how he reports and things like that. So for him to say that they're already making calls, I think it's just insinuating that there is the trouble there. But I think where I do give him credit is in that second part where Patrik Allvin has done this in the past. And I think it does bode well for trending towards doing that. It's just very assumptuous to say that there's already problems within the defense. I know the defense isn't what it was last year. It's struggling, but I think it's just a matter of finding the right pieces. And if they go out and get a guy at the trade deadline, I think they might do it a little bit earlier, but I don't think we're going to see it this soon in the season yet.
Because the biggest thing with this Canucks team is when you're looking at this defense, if they can get one more legitimate top 4 defenseman, maybe a guy to play with Quinn Hughes moving Hronek down, maybe it's a guy to play on the second period if you want to move a guy like Carson Soucy down to the third period. In my opinion, the Canucks are truly one defenseman away from having the deepest defensive core in the NHL. Like I said, Hughes, Hronek, Soucy, Myers, Brannstrom, Darnay, Forbert, Juleson. These guys can all play in the NHL, and one defenseman that I've really wanted to point out was a guy like Rasmus Andersson. Rasmus Andersson, despite the Flames being quite literally almost the best team in the West at the moment, maybe they flame out, maybe they continue, but if a guy like Rasmus Andersson, and a lot of people were speculating that Rasmus Andersson could be on the block and he would be perfect. We can see in 9 games, 4 goals, 6 assists, 10 points. He's a +6. We can see last year 39 points, the year before 49, 50, and you can work your way back. Griffen, looking at a guy like Rasmus Andersson, before we get into his contract and what it might possibly cost to acquire him, do you think he would be the perfect fit to maybe slide into this top 4, or maybe even out of the top pairing to play with PD as he is a right-handed defenseman?
I think it would be very interesting. I think the key thing you said is before we look at the cost, before we look at the cap hit, because on paper, just looking at that, absolutely go out and get him if you can, because that will help bolster down this defensive core where, like you said, we have the depth. It's just things haven't been clicking. It's taken a while to get things going for the Canucks, not only on the defensive side of things, but also on the forward side of things. We've seen some players that need to get going, some that have just recently started going. So maybe for the defensemen, it's only a matter of time before that happens. However, I've always been a big advocate of you can always be better. Your team can always be better. So if you can go out and get those pieces, if you can afford it, absolutely go ahead and do it.
And the biggest thing is, when we're looking at a guy like Rasmus Andersson, we've seen Allvin go out and get a guy like Elias Lindholm. We've seen him get a guy like Nikita Zadorov. But a guy like Andersson still has this year and next year on his contract. 28 years old, he's a right-handed defenseman, 6'1", he plays a great two-way game. Andersson comes in at a cap hit of $4.55 million. And as I said, this contract expires in 2025-2026. So looking at this contract, he fits the Canucks perfectly. This is a low cap hit you can use for 2 years. This is a guy that could come in, fill the gap in a guy like Tom Willander until he makes this team, until a guy like DPD finally makes this team. 2-year contracts on a guy would be perfect, but it's going to cost a lot. If you're looking at this, Griffen, as a Canucks fan, or if you're looking at this from the manager's side, would you move out a top prospect if that's a guy like Jonathan Leckmack, a guy like Tom Willander, maybe a pick, or would you rather just sit and hope to find a cheaper cost than a guy like Andersson, as he may cost a lot on the 2-year deal?
Yeah, that cap hit is really something that once you look at it, it's like I said, but when you present the idea at first of Anderson, you're going, yeah, let's do it. Then you look at the cap hit, and that's where things get a little bit scary, especially when looking at Vancouver's prospect pool. We know that teams are definitely definitely have their eyes on players like Jonathan Leckmack, Tom Willander, DPD. So teams might know this as well when the Canucks go into negotiations. So they might already have a little bit of leverage there saying, hey, if you want to make this happen so that you can go and try and win a cup this year and or next year, give us one of your keys to the future because you're going to have to make a sacrifice at some point. So if that is the case, I would rather give up a guy like DPD than Tom Willander because I think the upside with Tom Willander is just a little bit more. However, if it's giving away draft picks, I'm okay with that because I'm very confident with our current prospect pool.
And the biggest thing with this is Calgary is one of the top teams in the West. As I said, they could flame out and go back to being a lottery team, or we could see this team to continue to go into this season and make the playoffs. So a guy like Anderson might be out of the realm. But if you guys watch this far and you want to go down and leave a comment on who you would like the Canucks to go after on defense, even a guy at forward, you can leave a comment down below. I know goaltenders is not the issue at the moment, as we have 3 guys that can play in the NHL. But with that, we'll hop straight into everyone's favorite topic, which is comments of the day. The comment today comes from Mike Gooden, and he says, Garland makes any line dangerous. Glad Elias Pettersson got a taste of what to come. And I couldn't agree anymore. I think once Garland gets back with Dakota Joshua, we're going to see another level of him unlocked like we did last season. But if you made it this far and you want to go down and leave a comment on anything we talked about, you could be featured on Comments of the Day. Way down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.